3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the July 6, 2021 Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee meeting. To start, we've got a downtown rehabilitation update, and that's Mr. Hoyan.
Good day, Chairman, Mayor Clayton, and members. Update on the Downtown Rehabilitation Phase 4 project for July 6th. The water and sanitary service connections have been completed on all the businesses in Block 1, west of 99th Street. 100th Avenue between 99th Street and 98th Street was fully closed to vehicular traffic with the road surface and aggregate removed. With this closure, a temporary crosswalk was provided just east of 99th Street and to allow pedestrian traffic from the south side of 100th Avenue to the north side of 100th Avenue. This temporary crosswalk is manned by a flag person to ensure safety. On July 1st, the intersection of 100th Street and 100th Avenue was closed so as to complete the connection of water and storm sewer through that intersection. This work entailed the removal of sidewalks west of 100th Street for approximately 25 meters. Temporary paved pathways have been placed on both sides of 100th Avenue to ensure pedestrian movement. With the completion of the water and sanitary services on Block 1, Knelson Sand and Gravel has begun the installation of the stabilized road surface west from 99th Street to the mid-block location. During the past week of heat, the contractors moved their work hours so that they would start at 4 a.m. so as to avoid the heat in the afternoon. At this point, the project is completely on schedule. Expectations for the next 2 weeks are to see work begin on the sidewalks, flower beds, and seat walls west of 100th Street, as well as completion of the stabilized road surface through the intersection of 100th Street and 100th Avenue. The installation of water and sanitary service connections east of 99th Street should begin in this time frame. Expected completion of the intersection of 100th Street and 100th Avenue is August 3rd, and that's my report for this time period.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Bressie, and thank you very much, Mr. Hoyan, for your report. By all accounts, I'm hearing from the public that they're very impressed with the way construction is going out. They're excited to see the transformation of downtown, and I think you and your crews and Knelson's crews have been doing a great job with at least directing and diverting traffic. There's one complaint that keeps coming up for me over the past 3 weeks, and it's in regards to the temporary lights that are set up on 102nd and 100th Street. It seems that they're always on red no matter which direction you're going. And so those are the complaints that I'm getting. So I guess my question is there a better way that we can time those so that we can improve traffic flow on that busy street for people who are heading northbound after detouring?
I'll look into that, Councillor Thiessen. The light timings are provided by the contractors, subcontractor, basically. So I will bring that to their attention. It does cause me problems getting to Tim Hortons, that's for sure. So
yeah, well, I think that's where the complaints are coming from. I tell them to come from the north, traveling south, and it's easier that way.
Okay, I'll look into that, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Are there any other questions? Excellent. Well, thank you for the update. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Bressie.
And then next we've got Director Service Area Report, and that's going to be Mr. Carroll giving that today.
Thanks, Chairman Bressie. I have a brief report from Infrastructure and Economic Development for the last couple of weeks. Economic Development, since the last update, the Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator welcomed 5 new businesses to the city. And in the last 2 weeks, 6 additional training grants were approved, supporting 8 employees in training. And 2 new local marketing grants were also approved at $2,500 each. In energy and environment, we had a fish kill in the Bear Creek, and we are working with transportation services people to monitor the situation and remove any of the dead fish as they appear. And crews really love working with dead fish when it's 42 degrees, but we get through it anyway. Crystal Lake, there was a release, which we thought was odd, and considering the high temperatures we had, a release of some of the preservative in the piles at the Crystal Lake Lookoff. And Our transportation and parks crew responded with the environmental crew and the fire department to put a containment boom around it to contain the release, and also we put some secondary containment around 150 pilings that support that structure also. The large boom has been removed, but we're keeping the smaller booms in place for a bit yet to contain that any additional release from that. And we're using some peat absorbent material to clean that up too. So it went, for the situation went fairly quickly, and thanks to everybody involved in that. The CHP project, there's at Eastling. The sound study came back on June 28th, and the data shows that the units are emitting a couple decibels higher than the 57 that was guaranteed. And a sound study recommends construction of a noise barrier. So right now, ATCO is currently getting quotes for barrier design, procurement of materials, and construction. And ATCO will continue to work with administration until the city is satisfied with the resolution. In engineering services, obviously for driving around town, there's lots of construction going on for sure. And a couple of recent tenders have just closed. The mudjacking program for 2021 and the Mount View Stormwater Management Phase 2 tender was closed. A quick update of the construction projects currently going on. The road overlay 108th Street between 100th Ave and the Bears Creek Bridges is beginning, probably started today actually. And it will, and also the road construction, College Park, West Side Drive, 103rd Ave, west of 102nd Street, Bristol Ridge Local Roads, 100th Avenue Service Road, west of 108th Street, and Mount View Local Roads. And there's storm sewer upgrades going on in the Mount View neighborhood. Traffic signal inspection, we've inspected 53 poles at 14 different intersections, and that's ongoing. Pedestrian bridges, cleaning, repairs, and other maintenance work taking place on pedestrian bridges throughout Muskogee Park Trail System, and the mobilization for the Mascotte Bridge construction schedule for mid-July. Intersection improvements, 108th Ave and 92nd Street is almost completely done, and there's a delay in getting the signal poles replaced due to steels not being delivered yet until later this summer, but the intersection, as far as the signals go, is fully operational. In parks and transportation, the line painting program, we're getting our second go at the line painting program, and we're doing some parking lots around the city, some of the city-owned parking lots. As mentioned earlier in the report from our procurement people, that the Bike Skills Park and the South Bear Creek Ball Diamond construction tenders are about to be tendered this week. We've completed our gravel road program, and our dust control program is completed for this year. And in parks, we've obviously with the hot weather, we've focused a lot of our attention to keeping our investments in trees and flowers well hydrated. So we're double shifting our water trucks and trying to keep everything alive. And this year we've planted probably between replacements and new trees, about 800 trees we planted this year. Along with, we've planted 5,000 seedlings in the Arbor Hills and Woody Channel area this year also. And that's my report. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Excellent, thank you. I see Councillor O'Toole getting in.
Yeah, it's not a question. It's just kudos. A few weeks ago, there was a big windstorm went through, and Galway Park is not that far from my house, and a big tree, big branch fell over, and I was going to report it in the morning. By the time I reported it, it was going to report it. It was already cleaned up. So thanks to the city crews. And not only did they clean it up, they cleaned up the whole area, got all the branches and leaves out of there, so it looked like nothing happened. So kudos to the park staff on that.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Great, well, thank you for the update, and a big thank you for your crews working through the heat. It's important work they're doing, and sure can't be fun in the heat wave we just had, so we really appreciate it. We don't have any items correspondence. We don't have any other business. So that brings us to bylaw and policy review. And the first one is our edible landscaping policy, and that is Ms. Gardner.
Good morning, Chair Bressy. Edible landscaping is an essential factor in the sustainability of our community. Having readily available fruits and vegetables provides food security for many community members and teaches residents how to incorporate gardens within their yards. Policy 212 was adopted in 2014. Since 2015, many projects have been implemented, including edibles such as rhubarb in the Planters downtown, vegetables in the Learning Garden at Coca-Cola Centre, strawberries at the Ernie Radburn Pavilion, and 12 orchards within the community parks. Edible landscaping is now a component of the GP Grows program, with several city departments participating in developing programs and projects. Parks Operations continues to work with neighborhood associations to add orchards and edible plantings where the space permits. As part of the review, internal and external stakeholders were engaged to provide comments. Comments on the policy were minimal, with most of the feedback surrounding procedures. Administration will continue to work with stakeholders in amending the procedures attached to this policy. The amendments to Policy 212 are primarily grammatical, except for the addition of Parks' commitment to plant vegetables where practical. Administration is recommending that the IED Committee recommend that Council approve the revisions to Policy 212.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy. This is really great. This is a great news story. I hope our media is picking up on this. I noticed the strawberries in our planters actually on Canada Day walking by, and I was like, hey, we planted strawberries in there. I can't wait to pick them. So I'm not going to tell anybody about it, but that's the media. I'm just going to pick buckets for myself and surprise kids with them when they're down there with their families too. They'll give them some treats. The question that I have in regards to this is, seems like we're having a big problem in the uptake of community gardens in our neighborhoods. Now, talking with some people over the years, a lot of the feedback is pretty consistent. What they found is that it's pretty, I guess, prohibitive for them to actually be able to set up a community garden. So first, we require $2 million liability insurance plus a guaranteed volunteer list to help maintain the garden. And I understand our reasoning behind it. We don't want to create weed beds that the city has to go in and sod over later because people didn't care for it. But I guess as this report says, we'll look at it and see if the community gardens should be tweaked over the next 4 years or what. But is there a way to make it more accessible? I think that's the big thing that's been coming up for me is if you have like a neighborhood association, it's great. They have the liability. They don't necessarily have the 10 people to help you maintain the garden. And in some cases, in some neighborhoods where they do have like their own like guerrilla community garden, it's usually 1 or 2 people that do a lot of the watering and everyone takes a hand in and pulling the weeds and stuff like that. So is there a way we can make it more accessible to groups or to neighbors in residential areas that want to start a community garden and may not have the liability insurance connection to a neighborhood association or 10 volunteers to help them with that?
Thank you, Chair Bressy. So this is something that has come up as part of the procedures. It's feedback that we've heard as well. The 10 volunteers aligns with the city's policy with the rinks. It also is based on previous experience where you have people start a garden and then May and June, it's a lot of volunteers and then nobody is there to finish at the end of the year. And that's part of the concerns. We have, in our discussions, some of the recommendations in the procedure is that they get a letter of support from the neighborhood association. And that way that there is one that covers the liability insurance and 2 that says that the neighborhood association is interested in helping. To just have one person responsible, when that, in our experience, again with the community garden we had downtown, and then as far as grants that were provided to schools, if that one person leaves, then we've experienced where they come back and ask us to either clean it up or pay for the cleanup. And that becomes cost prohibitive, which is why we want more than one person. So my short answer is, I don't know. We are working with the stakeholders to try and come up with what would be a better solution. And it is something we're considering. I just don't know what that's going to look like. We do need to make sure that we are aligned with our operations in parks so that we're not severely impacting their operations. While they do talk about the 10, the biggest factor that we found is actually access to water. And that's where, if they can't give us an exit strategy, we would overlook the 10 if they could come up with an exit strategy and how they're going to access water. And we've explained that, and we still have had none come forward.
Well, thank you for that. And this will be something that'll be interesting to review over a while. Looks like the city's got our heads in the game when it comes to edible landscaping. It's just the community gardening piece that we maybe is something to review and maybe tweak in the future. Just a quick follow-up question. Last year, when we did when we started up the GP Grows project, in all of our orchards, we seem to have a potato patch and little bit of plantings everywhere. Are we doing that again this year in our orchards? And are we maintaining that or not?
So, Chair Bressy, we have planted potatoes. We had surplus potatoes that we planted in some orchards. I can't confirm which orchards they are. I think I know which ones they are, but I can't confirm. But they are, I believe, in 2 different orchards that we planted roughly 50 pounds of potatoes, I believe.
Okay, great. And is the city maintaining that, or is that, yeah?
Yes, Chair Bressy, it is the city maintaining those.
Okay, good to hear. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. Ms. Gardner, back to the community garden piece, and I appreciate the parameters that we've set out. I'm curious, though, for example, 2 neighbors want to go have an area and have a community garden. They choose to water it themselves. What's the risk? I mean, I understand they're supposed to have liability insurance, but they plant some potatoes and then they decide they don't want to spend the water anymore. Like, how much are we seeing people infringing on the parameters and doing sort of illegal community gardens? And what's the concern and the risk for future people just deciding to do this?
Chair Bressy, I believe it's the city policy that when we're doing these kind of activities that we have the liability insurance. That's the direction that I've received from legislative services. Yes, there is the risk that people continue to do that. And for us, for the city as an organization, the risk primarily is the cleanup. That's the biggest risk if they discontinue maintaining that.
Thank you.
Excellent. A question I've had is if there's been any talks with corporate comms or with parks about signs or just helping advertise our edible landscape policies. I know I have members of the public routinely ask me, am I actually allowed to eat that stuff? And I'm glad they've asked the councillor and I've been able to encourage them, but I hope that I'd love to see us do a better job of letting everybody know that please eat that stuff. So has there been any talk about what communication might look like going forward?
Thank you, Chair Bressy. Yes, we are working with marketing and communications on that kind of information. There are some parks or the orchards that do have the signage. They're not at all places. With the Coca-Cola Center, we've been using the vegetables that are harvested there and giving them to the community kitchen with the Friendship Center. So some of those areas where we're maintaining them, we're providing them to those community structures. But where the orchards are, yes, as the orchards age and they're ready to harvest, they are providing what kinds of fruits are there, what to use them for, and there is a template that's provided.
Excellent, thank you. And just an idea for you folks with Director Miller is, I know my family's really appreciated a lot of the scavenger hunts that the city's doing right now, and maybe there's room for an edible scavenger hunt. Might be a fun way to do that sometimes. Just an idea for you. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. If we're throwing out ideas, I know that when we were working on creating the edible landscaping policy, several municipalities across the province actually took our lead and either created edible landscaping policies or procedures, or as the City of Edmonton did, they made an edible city app. That could be a way that we could advertise, where edibles are and how they're planted within the city, and so that people are at least aware of it. Have we had any discussions or any thoughts on whether or not we could maybe tag on to what they tagged on from us and create an Edible City app for ourselves?
Ms. Gardner.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. We do have the community orchards listed under the GP Grows section on the website. I can always have this conversation with ITS as to whether that is practical. It is in the GP maps as well, where they are, and all of the information regarding any of the GP Grows projects are contained within that section of the website.
Yeah, and I actually love that website. I love that we created that. And I always direct people when they say, oh, we have orchards, I say, well, yeah, we got like 14. Go check it out. Here it is. Go citygp.com/GP Grows. But what people maybe, I think Councillor Bressie was maybe alluding to was that, we have lots of Saskatoon bushes that are planted around the city. We have some walnut trees. We have goji bushes. We have all sorts of really cool things that are planted that are edible that people aren't sure if they're still allowed to pick or eat. So it's great that we're directing people to our orchards, but if there's a way that we could show them maybe a bit more, and I know that could be labor intensive between parks and IT, but at least for mapping it with GIS and stuff, but it is an idea to educate the public a bit more on where they can pick and plant.
Excellent.
Thanks.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Is anybody prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, I would move that the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee recommend Council approve the revisions to Policy 212. Just speaking to this, there are some things that I think from the beginning, and Ms. Gardner can attest to this, that I've been hesitant about the $2 million liability and the access to volunteers for some people. I think a lot of that can be covered through the neighborhood associations, and I really hope that, for people who want to garden in the community and want to see more of that, that they would engage with their neighborhood associations and help to flesh that out, because rather than come as 10 individuals, they've already got that liability insurance built into their neighborhoods, and probably access to volunteers as well. So I would encourage people to get involved with their neighborhood associations. But other than that, yeah, that's the only thing, the $2 million liability, that I've always been hesitant of. But there are ways around that, so that already exists. So I would move that we approve as revised.
Great, thank you. Is there any conversation or debate on this motion? In that case, I will call the motion's question. And that motion carries. So thank you, Ms. Gardner, for your work, not just on this review, but you and your people for the work on the whole edible landscaping. I think that is a really cool feature of our community. So thank you for that. We appreciate it. And with that, we will move on to the item 6.2, which is snow and ice control policy. And that is Mr. Carroll.
Thanks, Chairman Bressie, and I'm here to present a revised edition of our snow and ice control policy. The last time that we brought a policy to council was in 2014, so it's due to be brought forward again. There's been some tweaks and changes over that period of time, some minor and some not so minor. I'll quickly go over some of the revisions that are proposed for this latest edition. Changing references to from transportation services to transportation and parks to reflect a bit of an organizational change there. We're revising for when plowing will begin from a specified accumulation to where there is sufficient snow accumulation for plowing to be effective. And this is, I think there was a perception out there that we waited until snow accumulated to a certain amount before we plowed. But in actuality, we wrote, prior to snow even starting, doing some preparation. So. We revise that to indicate that when there's sufficient snow accumulation for plowing to be effective. We revise some time standards for our priority 2 roads to be plowed from 72 hours to 5 days after the priority 1 roads are complete. This reflects the actual time that it takes for us to do our priority 2 roads, and it aligns with our present service. We revise the time standard for priority 3 roads, which are industrial roads, to be plowed from 5 days after the end of the snowfall to 5 days after priority 1 roads are complete. Our communication and media plans and for winter operations are now coordinated through our communications and marketing department. We revised the procedure of how we hire contractors to assist in our snow clearing operations. So there's a request for proposals done every 2 years, and that'll be coming up again shortly. We revised to reflect the fact that the old Highway 43 corridor is now city-owned and city-maintained. Revised to reflect the fact that during residential snow plowing operations, temporary snow route signs will not be placed 24 hours before service commences. That was an old practice that we haven't done in quite some time. We revised the residential snow clearing operations to reflect the fact that all windrows across driveways will be cleared during operations, which, as this council has one of the initial changes that we did with the new council was to do all of our windrows. And I think most residents appreciate that. Revised that the residential snow clearing operations with respect to where the snow is being placed as follows. This is probably one of the major change that we're proposing for the policy this year is that when there is a sidewalk on one side of the road, the snow will be plowed to the side of the road without a sidewalk and pushed past the curb and stored on City Boulevard. This will, the practice of splitting the snow in the middle of the road and plowing to the sides kind of coincided with the fact that when we first started our residential program, we didn't clear all the windrows, so it basically spread the snow from the road around to the homeowners evenly, so that everybody had similar amounts of snow to deal with across their driveways. But obviously, with the change in our procedure that we clear all the driveways, it didn't make a whole lot of sense anymore to be splitting in that respect. And when we did split it, of course, we had to store it on the side of the road, which therefore narrowed up the width of the road in winter months, and obviously spilling some of the snow onto sidewalks that a lot of residents spent a lot of time clearing off, and we would get some upset people calling us about that. So this way, it'll put all the snow on the side of the road without the sidewalk. We should avoid that. Obviously, one of the issues that may come up is that there's a lot of snow on one side and no snow on the other side. But we thought with the fact that people have a sidewalk, have the duty to maintain that sidewalk, we thought it was a fair trade-off. But everybody gets a little bit of snow to deal with. And when there's snow on sidewalks on both sides of the road, snow will either be windrowed and stored on the side of the road or pushed past the curb and stored on City Boulevard. This is mainly in our older parts of town where we've got sidewalk on both sides, and there's usually a boulevard there. We can push it over the curb and store it on that boulevard. So that's the major updates. And if there's any questions further, I'm certainly here to take them.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Thanks for the reports, Mr. Carroll. I'm just curious, in the report it talks about an option of a certain accumulation of snow of hitting 7.5 centimeters. What's our current practice then?
Thanks to the Chair. Our current practice is basically as soon as we get enough snow to plow, we're out there plowing it. And it just depends on how the snow comes. We would be doing some pre-work, putting some sand down at intersections or salt, depending on temperatures. And as soon as we get enough snow to actively plow, we will plow it. And this doesn't put that accumulation factor in there, which, as I said earlier, I think there was a perception that we wait for snow to accumulate before we go out and start our service. But it's not an accurate reflection of how we actually carry out this program.
Okay, so thanks for that. I mean, I'm happy with how the program's been running. My other question is about ice control. Just wondering, are we looking at switching how we're doing ice control currently, or would we I'm not seeing a lot of ice control differences in this. And what I mean is by that is it feels like we use an awful lot of ice control on some intersections. A little bit of overkill at times, and I can appreciate the community always wants more down, but just wondering what impacts that's going to have on our road when we're using that much calcium in some areas about road erosion. If there's another product that we could be looking at using that would work without potentially creating road erosion over the time.
Thanks, through the chair. Yes, we constantly keep an eye on different products that are out there, and a couple of our units actually have liquid brine capabilities, and we've experimented with that over the past few years, and the results are not what we expected as far as it being a safer product. With our salt management plan, part of our strategies is to use the right amount of salt, and we're constantly educating our operators about when to apply salt and what temperatures to apply salt, and overall, I mean, if you look at the amount of salt that we apply to our roads, it's we're probably between 1,500 and 2,000 tons per year, which is compared to other areas across Canada. In previous employment for myself, I would use that much salt in one event, and so it's all relative, depending on what part of the country you're in and what kind of temperatures and winter conditions you're experiencing. But all in all, I think our operators do a very good job at controlling the amount of salt that they use, and our main product that we use for controlling ice is sand. And sand, of course, is we get out as soon as we can and pick up the debris left over from the winter with our spring cleanup to minimize the amount of sand that gets into our storm sewer system. So we've improved our system for the spring cleanup also, which allows us to pick it up quicker.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Great. Are there any other questions? Mayor Clayton, and then Councillor Thiessen.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. My question in regards to communication with the item being removed from the policy to let neighborhoods know 24 hours notice of when you're coming into their neighborhoods. I know at some point along the way we've talked about communication with neighborhoods, and I know people can sign up for snow removal updates, etc. To your knowledge, has the uptake in sign up and communication for the snow removal updates been successful? And if not, would we hope to improve that? I know that if you live on a street that people park on the street and the snow removal comes and it gets plowed around those vehicles, it can create quite a pattern for the rest of the winter. And so I'm curious if there's opportunities for us to improve communication to neighborhoods and to people. So if we're not going to let them know 24 hours in advance, maybe they're getting an email or an automated text or something to let them know that snow removal is coming to their area.
Thanks, through the chair. Yes, there are several options available to people to make themselves aware of it. The actual placing of signs hasn't been done for quite some time.
Yeah. Regardless of it's been the same schedule for a long time, but people still don't understand that. And the part of the problem is in the residentials, you say you're coming the day before garbage removal, but okay, it's not this week. Oh yeah, right, it's next week, and so it's not consistent enough for people to know that it's always the day before garbage removal. And so depending on the accumulation of snowfall, it may not happen for a while, so it's not really consistent in neighborhoods.
Thanks to the chair. Yes, and with the service, we do our best to educate at the beginning of the year just how the service operates. It's not every day before your garbage day. Obviously, the residential service has to be initiated first, and then we may or may not be there the first week, maybe the second week, depending on how operations go and how much snow we're dealing with. So certainly we can take that into consideration when we're preparing our communications plan for this upcoming winter to advise people of some of the services that are available so they can get email or text notifications that service is starting, and do as good a job as we can about getting the information out there through the various websites and socials about whether or not a service is actually happening or not, because there's still people out there who don't understand completely how the service runs. And for instance, this past winter, we with the low accumulation that we have, we were only in residential areas 3 times. So obviously, it's not every day. It's not every week we're in, and very weather dependent.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, I see Ms. Bilodeau's.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
And I also have a question, an additional communication question for her after she answers this.
Sure, yeah, and my apologies, Ms. Bildo. I'm not used to looking at both, so if you've been waiting a while there, my apologies, but please add anything you might have to add.
No worries. Thank you very much. Through the chair, I just want to jump in just to briefly highlight some of the efforts that have been undertaken. Of course, each year we do look to enhance our efforts in getting information out to the public, especially in a timely manner to indicate when snow removal operations will be in effect. So our rollout of the snow updates have been, to our consideration, quite successful. Currently, we have 297 subscriptions. And of course, that does grow when the snow season does come into effect as more people do tune in. So we will continue with those efforts to build awareness that that is a resource where people do get automatic emailed updates on the day prior to indicate when that when their neighborhood will be affected by activated snow removal. And another piece that we do look to clarify in the communications going out, and that we certainly will take into consideration moving forward for the upcoming snow season, is also clarifying the difference between residential road clearing and priority road clearing. So that is something that we are investing in as we go forward from season to season, and we will certainly look at clarifying in more depth heading into next season.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Thanks, Ms. Bilodeau. Just to clarify, you will be sending out a flyer again this year at the beginning of snow removal season, so people, if they choose to, can keep it on their fridge. They know where they fit in that schedule.
Yes, that is correct. We will seek to put out another snow brochure this coming fall.
And if I can, Chair Bressie, the other, if you haven't signed, for the public, if you haven't signed up for the snow removal updates, administration was very nimble in this year in tweaking it a bit so that if your neighborhood didn't actually get done on one day because of accumulation and it was more snow than the capacity that we were able to handle, the updates are actually quite responsive. So you'll see it on the next day in regards to the neighborhood. Sorry, we didn't finish this neighborhood. It's added to the list for this day. So I encourage public to sign up for snow removal updates. They are quite responsive, and they give you, a good idea of where you're going to see the snow plows that day. I think that it's a really important piece of communication for people, and I encourage people to sign up for it. So thanks for the information.
Thank you. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressie, and thank you very much, Mr. Carroll, for this annual update. I really appreciate it. I guess I have a question in regards to our service levels, and maybe I found something here as far as tweaking. But under our priority 1, 2, and 3, priority 1 is a certain amount of accumulation. Priority 2 is 5 days after priority 1 roads are complete, and priority 3 is where is this? Is I think 5 days after the snowfall event. Why the difference between priority 2 and priority 3? And does that sort of make priority 3 a priority 2?
Thanks through the chair. It's got more to do with when we actually do our priority. Priority 3s are something that we would do during our evening shift and overnight shift. And priority 2s are completed mainly during the day shift or early afternoon shift.
Okay, but as far as like the time standards that we have in our policy here, one says 5 days after a snowfall event for priority 3s, and one says 5 days after priority 1s are done. So I guess my question for you is, how long does it take to do priority 1? And under the wording of this policy right now, would that mean that it's quite likely that we might be doing priority 3 roads before priority 2 roads?
I think yes, it's more that they're done simultaneously, but always the priority 2 roads are a higher. We want to get those cleared up because they're obviously our bus and transit routes, and they are the roads that we put the windrows in the middle of the road and collect it later on. Priority 3 roads are just plowed to the sides, and the windrows aren't removed. So they, in theory, sometimes they may get done, sooner because of the less effort that's involved because of the windrow pickup. But priority two it's more of defining, whether or not we remove the snow completely from the road or not. And priority two we do. Priority three we push the snow to the side.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I guess you did mention windrows, so I do have a second question in regards to windrows. I guess it's my understanding that we have a certain height restriction within our procedures that says windrows can only be so tall. It's not reflected in the policy here, though. So when we send out contractors to go do residential neighborhoods, what is our standard practice for the height of windrows?
Thanks through the chair. I guess it depends on what kind of windrow we're talking about. When I refer to windrows, I'm referring to the windrows that we create on our priority two roads. And windrows in residential areas would be the windrows on the sides of the roads. And with the revised procedure that we're proposing for this year, the snow will be pushed past the curb and stored on the city boulevard. So we don't really define a height that, obviously we want to, not place windrows so that they're causing any kind of safety issues with respect to sight lines. We'll keep a close watch on that. But the size of them obviously can vary with the amount of snow we got. And if it's a minor snowfall, the windrow is going to be smaller. But if it's a large snow, and if we got, say, a significant amount of snow, your windrows are going to be higher. So we steered away from indicating a maximum height because of that.
Awesome. Okay. That's good to hear, because I think I've been falsely advertising to the public that we do have a maximum height. So that's my bad. I'll get up to date on that. I guess for the most part, over this last winter season, I received more compliments about our snow removal than I did receive complaints. The complaints that I did receive from, and I'm wondering if this tweak to the policy might address, is on residential streets that have sidewalks on both sides, and then they also don't have that boulevard stripping where we can store snow and stuff like that. So some people had a bit of a bleed over onto their sidewalks, and they were wondering, how will we clear this? When's the city coming to pick the snow up and stuff like that? And in some areas we don't have a big boulevard to put snow storage on. Do you think that these challenges are addressed through the changes in this policy that are presented today?
Thanks, just through the chair. Somewhat. I mean, you're still going to have some areas where there's just nowhere to put the snow but to store it on the road. And where we have two sidewalks on both sides, as you alluded to, and they're usually the older areas of town. They're usually the areas of town that have wider streets to begin with, and there is room to store it on the side of the road. Unfortunately, what happens with that sometimes is you remove some of the on-street parking, and people, have some complaints about that, about the snow being on the road and not having anywhere to park, and that is a fact that we have to deal with, and it's a fact that the homeowner has to deal with. If they want to park on the street, then there may be some effort on their part to do something with that windrow that's on the street. But our operators make every effort to keep the roads as clear and as wide as possible. And the change that's proposed for residential areas to put the snow on one side, you will have the result of having a wider road. And if on-street parking is possible, then this procedure will facilitate that and keep the roads wider.
And I do have one more question, actually. I'm glad that you talked about old neighborhoods and windrow storage and stuff like that. One thing that's happened over the last couple of years, and I've noticed it especially in the Mount View area, and even talked to a few people, where I see like this giant snow hill, like right on their front yard, covering their big window. And when I talked with the couple of the neighbors that had their snow pushed up like that, they said that they asked for that so that they could have on-street parking, and they don't mind the snow storage on their front yard because they don't use it very often. Do we have any kind of procedure where we reward, or at least show our appreciation to those good neighbors who give us access to their front yard, so that maybe they can have on-street parking or their neighbors can have on-street parking where there is no snow storage.
Yes, through the chair. We don't have any program in place for that, but our operators, when they're out there working in the neighborhoods, are very receptive to requests from the public. And if it's possible, obviously, and somebody wants the snow removed from the road, and our operators are there, for the most part, they're receptive to that, and we'll clear that park area for you. We do get requests from people that they would like that to happen every time. We don't really have a good system in place because sometimes it's different operators in neighborhoods, and one rotation it might be one operator, next rotation it may be another. So it's difficult to keep track of all those. But like I said, we're very receptive to working with our residents to do what we can to kind of make the situation as good as we can for them if they have to park on the street.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe something for our future council to think of, maybe administration, and including that in our old Snow Angels program, which is a great one to reward good neighbors for snow removal and storage. Anyways, thank you.
Great, thank you. A couple questions I've got is, I know it varies year to year depending on how much snow we get, but can you remind me what our approximate budget every year is for snow removal?
It's about $6 million.
Thank you. And do we have any service standards for our active transportation network in terms of, do we have any council-approved service standards for how long until paths and walkways are cleared?
Thanks. Yes, we don't have a standard per se, but we do have a crew and supervisor that as like everything else, as soon as we plow roads, we plow our trails. And for the most part, within 48 hours, we have most of our trails open. Of course, that depends on statutory holidays and weekends where if we don't have full crews on, it may take a little longer. But if we get a snowstorm on a Monday, then we're on our trails right away, and most are clear within 48 hours.
Great, thank you. I know that a concern I often hear from residents to say this road hasn't been plowed all winter, and then when I've dug into it, I've actually found out, no, that road was plowed 2 weeks ago and you've just forgotten about it. Or residents saying, hey, because we haven't driven past snowplow yet, we don't think they're out yet. Has there been any conversation about using new technologies that are available to us in terms of GPS and mapping to give a more live update to residents on maybe not tracking where the plow is right this moment, but throughout the winter, helping residents figure out when was the last time their street was plowed? Have we had any conversations about potentially investigating that kind of technology?
Yes, thanks. Yes, we have had some preliminary discussion, and most of our equipment, the city-owned equipment anyway, is equipped with GPS. But the software that we're using, the intention was not to have that a public-facing type. It's more for internal use and deploying equipment internally and tracking equipment internally. But there is some new technology being installed in most of the city's fleet this coming year. And from what I understand, it does have the ability to have that public-facing component. So it's certainly something that we have in mind. And if it's readily available and there's a public that they want to see it, then certainly if that's going to increase our communications and give people more information, then we will fully support it. The only thing is that the equipment that we employ from contractors, which is a significant amount, we can have upwards of 20 pieces of equipment. It has in the past not been a requirement for them to be tracked with GPS, and that's the equipment that does the residential areas that, for the most part, we get the complaints about the areas not being cleared, or I haven't seen a snowplow all year. It's more the cul-de-sacs and the residential roads and that type of thing that we get that type of complaint on. But certainly it's something that we're looking at.
Great, thank you. And then another question I had is, has there been any work done, or is there any work planned to cost out different service levels in terms of figuring out, are there service levels where we're maybe paying for too high a service level and not getting the bang for our buck, or places where council might be interested in increasing spending to increase service levels? Just has there been Has there been or is there any work planned to price out different service levels?
Not per se. We haven't had a particular request to increase service levels. I mean, one of the requests that I do get on a somewhat regular basis is how much would it cost to haul all the snow at our residential areas rather than windrowing it on the sides, and much as we do on our priority 2 roads where we windrow in the middle and haul away. There's been requests over the years to provide that level of service in our residential areas. Like everything, it's possible, but logistically, with the amount of equipment that we have now and the amount of equipment that is available through the private sector, and more importantly, the capacity of our snow disposal facility, there's some challenges there for providing that level, and whether it's even practical to do it, in any kind of timely manner. Is a question also, but it's certainly millions of dollars to do something like that, and some upgrades to our capital infrastructure to support it also would be required.
You actually bring me to my last question. I've actually wondered the opposite: how much money can we save by hauling less snow, not spend by hauling more snow? And looking at our snow dump, I know that sometimes it appears in our capital budget, sometimes it's out. Just that new snow dump, how confident are we feeling with the capacity of our current snow dump with these approved service levels? And are we anticipating we're going to need a second snow dump to keep up these current snow removal levels?
Thanks, Chairman Bressie. Yes, I'm just looking at some statistics from previous years. This past year, we've hauled over 8,500 loads of snow to our snow dump. And when I say load, that could be a tandem load or an end dump load. So it's a significant amount, but if you look at some other years back in 2017-18, it's 28,000, so 3 times the amount. It gives you a bit of a comparison with the amounts of snow that are hauled. But as far as capacity, there's been some years where we've had to push higher, push longer with our equipment. But I always like to say the sky's the limit with the capacity that we can store in the snow dump. It's a large area. We had a large upgrade to it last summer where we had the entire area paved, and it operates quite a bit more efficiently now. We've got paved area, and we're able to contain the runoff more efficiently now that we do have that paved surface. But as far as building another facility, it's with the capital costs involved in land acquisition and everything, it's millions, if not tens of millions of dollars to build one. And I've never pushed in the time that I've been in this position for another facility. We've looked at it from time to time, but I'm thinking that with having to spend that much money, we'll hire a lot of trucks. And we're still a large city, but we're not huge. And I think that I've never experienced major disruptions or slowdowns to our service because of the distance that they had to haul. If we got to haul farther, we'll just hire a couple more trucks. Great. We work around it that way.
Great, thank you. I see Mayor Clayton, then Councillor Thiessen. I just want to see if anybody that hasn't got in wants to get in. I've given Councillor Plott a run at it already, so I'll go Mayor Clayton, Councillor Thiessen, Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Mr. Carroll, I'm curious in regards to, you mentioned that, up to 5 days, depending on weekends and statutory holidays. I'm wondering what the trigger is for that to be quicker. Obviously, people work over the weekends. Many people in our community work on statutory holidays. And so it's nice that, maybe some of our snow removal team doesn't, but I'm curious, what would be the trigger to see snow removal quicker in the city?
Thanks for the chair. Yes. If I gave the perception that we don't work weekends, and that wasn't correct, we do work quite a few weekends if needed. It just depends on how the snow comes and how far ahead we are in our program. Normally, if we don't have all our priority 2 roads done, we will work through a weekend to do that. We never work weekends in our residential areas because of parked vehicles and that type of thing. Our residential program is only a 5-day-a-week program, and it probably always will be. But it just seems that the the accumulation events are on Fridays, the last few years, and which, we just schedule shifts through. Our employees all know that if we need them on the weekends, then normally we get 100% attendance and our full shifts come in, and it's never been a problem, and we will work through the weekends if we need to, for sure.
So I guess more specifically, if I can, Chair Bressy, what would be the trigger for us to have another crew come in? If accumulation was significant in priority 1s and 2s, what would be the trigger for that to be quicker than to take 5 days to do the entire city in the priorities, not the residential?
Okay. Yes, thanks through the chair. What we've been trying to do over the past few years is align our priority 2 schedule with our residential schedule. So, if it's the day, and this is, not 100% all the time, but, it helps with our scheduling so that if we're doing residential areas in Monday's area, we'll be doing the priority 2s in that area too. So, it just kind of aligns up nicely sometimes, depending, of course, when that snow event happens. But Mondays, if we're doing residential, we're probably doing the priority 2s in your area also. So, to shorten that to, quicker than 5 days, sometimes we do, depending on the amount of snow, but sometimes it takes longer. And if you get an event in between, it can extend it also. So it's, the service levels are there to try to meet, but obviously events happen, and the accumulations are such that sometimes we exceed and sometimes we don't exceed the timeline. So it gives us some goals to shoot for, and it helps us with scheduling our crews.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Thiessen, then Councillor Palat.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy. I guess my next question is in regards to largely sidewalks. I know just participating in the chair leaders event, I know Councillor O'Toole has been involved with our Disabled Transportation Society, as well as our persons with disabilities. One thing that I hear every time I engage in those circles is that it's really hard to get around in the city in the wintertime. So sort of a double question for you. What's the average time it takes us to clear city-owned sidewalks for accessibility purposes for people who are accessibly challenged? And have we ever put any consideration in creating priority 1, 2, or 3 sidewalks for clearing? And what might it take for us to get there?
Thanks. Just through the chair. Yes, we do have already. There's a priority system with how we clear our trails. Obviously, any of our trails that are abutting arterial roads that are used as commuter trails will be priority 1, and there is a map attached to the policy that gives you a bit of an indication about how we deploy our snow removal crews for our trails. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier, depending on conditions, usually within 48 hours, you have most of those trails opened up, our priority 1s anyway, all of our arterials. And but there was always those areas, for instance, around intersections where we have islands and that type of thing that take a little bit more time to get to, and they may get recovered with snow from the operations on the roadways themselves, because we still plow snow to the side of the road, and sometimes when it gets plowed to the side of the road on our arterial roads, it covers the islands. So we have a crew that goes around usually on night shift and tries to clear all those off. But it's like you said, it's 48 hours. We're trying to kind of keep to that standard, although we haven't identify the standard in the policy itself, because our program is very much depends on the amounts of snow and the amount of equipment and the time of the week that it comes.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may, Chair Bressy. I know we got Artie, the Snowbot. Love Artie, it's very good. But how much other equipment do we have for sidewalk and trail clearing? I love the trails. I use them all the time in the winter, and I think your team has been doing a bang-up job, and it's great for me. I'm just thinking along city-owned sidewalks, and if we have enough equipment to meet the demand when the demand is there.
Yes, thanks to the chair. Yes, and with the coordinated approach between transportation and parks crews over the past couple of years with our snow removal operations, where our trail program has a supervisor that runs it, and there's cooperation from both transportation and parks crews to get out as right away and start cleaning these trails. We've improved as you mentioned, we've improved the system considerably over the past few years. The equipment that we employ right now, we've probably got between 6 and 8 pieces of equipment that will be running at any point in time, clearing trails, everything from our smaller plows that we'll do downtown to some larger tractor type plows that do our arterial roads. And I think that where we are, we're of course we could always use more, and if we had more, we could shorten that time frame down somewhat. But I think the 48 hours is reasonable considering the size of the city that we have and the amount of trails we have, because we have over 100 kilometers of them, and it's an effort that we do 24 hours a day when we have to get them up to get them clear so people can use them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Not specifically to do with the snow and ice policy, but it was brought up earlier. I'm curious when I go through around the province, and I see it happen quite commonly in the county, and I've seen other municipalities where they're using their dry ponds around the municipality for snow storage. I'm just wondering why the city, maybe it's through environmental policy, whatever, why our city seems to be very different than other municipalities I've seen as far as using dry ponds for snow storage.
Thanks to the chair. Yeah, there are specific federal regulations about how you dispose of snow. And back in the late 80s or early 90s, snow was declared to be a hazardous substance. So as far as disposal, municipalities follow the guidelines set out by the federal government for disposal, and it requires a facility much like we have at our snow dump, where it's an impervious surface and a system in place to collect the melt water in the springtime and treat it and release it in that way. I know that there's the ability of private operations and probably municipalities to use some areas as temporary disposal sites with the intention of either removing it at a later date or alternating years that they use that, and it's something that we've looked into in the past, but with the amount of debris that's left over, and if you take a look at the snow disposal site on Park Road, and at this time of year where there's a lot of garbage debris left from the road, if we went putting that in some of our dry storage ponds, it's going to leave a big mess for us to be cleaning up when it melts away. So we're putting it now. It contains that mess. We're able to pick up and take to our landfill and prepare the site for another snow season at about this time of year. And there is a lot of debris that's left over.
Okay. And just curious, what was mentioned earlier, just through when we get GPS potential analytics on our hauls, at what point, or maybe that's something the administration's working on internally, at some point, if we're spending hundreds or thousands of hours a year more in trucking to get stuff across the city, it would probably start justifying building another facility. But do we have an idea of where that point is, how many loads that would be, or do we need the analytics or the GPS tracking on these units to kind of have a better idea of how many hours we're using driving from, say, like a Pinnacle across town versus having something that on that southwest corner somewhere?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Yes, we haven't really dug into the data that much, and gave us a really good indication of when that second snow dump would make sense. But being in this business for quite a few years, and I just don't have the gut feeling that we're there yet, because our snow capacity at our dump is quite high. We have lots of capacity to haul, and the cost associated with building another facility that's up to the regulations that the federal government requires is going to be considerable. And I know that the city of Edmonton have just completed a snow dump facility of $25 million. So it's a considerable amount. I don't think we're there, but obviously at some point we will be, and maybe when we start getting some more data, we can work those numbers and do some calculations to see where it's going to make more sense to have one. But I just don't think we're there yet.
Okay, thanks for that. And if it's okay, Councillor Bress, I'd be willing to put the motion out to this.
Yeah, I don't see anybody else here, so by all means, I think
we've had Mr. Carroll in the hot seat long enough about this one, so I feel like we could. So I just make a recommendation that the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee recommends that Council approve the revisions to the Snow and Ice Policy 606.
Excellent. Is there anybody who's got discussion or debate for this? For me, I'm actually not going to support this motion, and the reason for that is because I frankly think we've got a lot more work to do on this snow and ice control policy. About 5% of our taxes go to the snow and ice control program. I'd also point out that our citizen satisfaction survey pointed out that this is both a very high importance program to residents and a low satisfaction program to residents. And this was targeted as one of 3 program areas where we can make substantial change in residents' perceptions of the city by upgrading and redoing this policy. And for me, I actually think that we do have a Cadillac service, and I've actually got appetite to look at places where we reduce it. But I think we've got work to do in terms of pricing out and communicating other alternatives to snow removal in our community, and having a more thorough engagement process of talking to our residents of, you want it good, quick, or cheap, and here are the different options you've got. So I think that there's a lot more work that needs to happen before we should be approving this, and I'm not comfortable approving this if we don't have a work plan for how that review is going to happen. So I cannot support this motion today. Is there anybody else that has discussion or debate on this motion? Councillor Platt, I'll let you close.
Thanks, Mayor, or thanks, Chair Bressy. I guess I'm going to support it because I didn't hear amendments coming out today, and if there's specific amendments, that's great. I think administration has done their homework. They've let us have a pretty lengthy debate on this, and so I would hope that we go to council, and if there's specific things that want to be debated or provisions that we want to change on it, then that'd be a great spot to have it. But I think just stalling us just to stall it and saying we need to have more chat, I guess for me, it's here for a reason. So let's have those conversations. Let's make amendments. Let's make suggestions now. I didn't hear a lot. There was a lot of great questions, but I didn't hear a lot of amendments thrown out. So for me, I hope we can support this, get it to council, give the community a week to give us some thoughts. And if there's some things that come from that, I'm all for making amendments and having that debate. But I don't see why we would just stop it now because we want some things on it. So I just ask us to support this and let us have this debate next week at council.
And that motion carries. And with that, that brings us to our outstanding items list, and that is Mr. Carroll again.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. We have one item on the outstanding item list, 1146, narrow home construction, and that is still slated to be brought to committee on August 17th.
Excellent, thank you. Could I get a motion for this policy? Or sorry, for the outstanding items list? Councillor Thiessen.
Looks like I just beat the mayor to the punch there, or to the hand raise, I guess. It's not so violent. So moved.
Great. And any conversation or debate on this motion? I will call to question. And that motion carries. And with that, I will thank everybody for being here today and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.